Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us on today's webinar, hosted by the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations. My name is Victor Trinidad with NCPMI, and today's topic is Unpacking Guided Action Plans with Sarah Bassler and Kelly Flower. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Victor. Hi, everybody. My name is Ashley McNish, and I am one of the staff members with the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations, and I am going to be your webinar host today. I'm very excited about this topic. This topic will be more specific towards coaches who are coaching classroom teachers, as this tool was created through research and work in that early childhood context. But I am very excited to be here today as we learn about a new tool on our website, the Guided Action Plans. With me today, we have Sarah Bassler and Kelly Flower. And I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves before we get started. Sarah, would you like to start?
Sure. I'm Sarah Bassler, and I work at Vanderbilt University in the Himmeter Lab. And the work that I do is primarily around practice-based coaching. I have been a coach, and I also help support other coaches to use PBC. I also support the work for the National Center for Early Childhood Development, Teaching and Learning. And so with that grant, we do a lot of work around PBC as well. And I'm happy to be joined today with my colleague and friend, Kelly. You want to introduce yourself?
Hey, everybody. I am Kelly Flower, and I am an SEL coach with Metro Nashville Public Schools. And I have the privilege to coach teachers in grades pre-K through first. And I've been working with Vanderbilt, helping teachers implement practice or pyramid model for the past 7 years. And before that, I was a classroom teacher.
Right. Yeah, Kelly's on the ground. She's doing this work as we speak. So today we're going to dig into the project that helped to develop this resource. So we're going to talk about the project as well as give a brief overview of the action planning process that situates itself within the PBC model. We're going to review guided action plans, introduce the resource, answer some questions about the benefits and some of the potential drawbacks, and things that you can consider about using this tool. So we'll start by digging into the research that kind of birthed this resource. So we started a project that was funded by the U.S. Department of Education and Education, Innovation, and Research, and we call it the EIR grant for short. The grantee was Metro Nashville Public Schools, and we supported MMPS coaches like Kelly to use practice-based coaching to support teachers within MMPS to use pyramid model practices. This project started out in public pre-K classrooms. We expanded to do some of this work as well in Murray County Public Schools here in Tennessee. And we scaled up and are working also with kindergarten teachers. And now we're expanding across the nation into Nebraska and California. So very important work, and so excited to have Kelly here to share her experience using this tool. But if it wasn't for this project, we wouldn't have developed this wonderful tool that we're sharing with you today. All right. We're also partners with the University of South Florida and also consult with the University of Denver. All right, so just to make sure that we're all on the same page about the model of coaching that this resource was designed for, we utilize PBC, or practice-based coaching, or PBC as we call it. And it's a content-ready model, which means that no matter the practices that you put in the middle or that are the focus of coaching, that you have a set of practices that you are focusing on. For this project, the focus of coaching was pyramid model and is pyramid model. The model focuses on creating shared goals and action plans with a coachee to help support them to use pyramid model practices in their classrooms. We then take that action plan and do a focused observation, observing the teacher using those practices in the context, and then engage in a reflection and feedback meeting where we give them feedback about what's going well. We think about how we might enhance their practice. And of course, this all occurs within the context of a collaborative partnership. So we're doing this with the coachee and not to the coachee. So very collaborative. So this process begins, we write this goal and action plan by starting with a strengths and needs assessment process. So we do that using either teapot data or TP-TOES data. We also have the coachee or the teacher that we're working with do a self-assessment and have them reflect on what are the practices that they think they do well, what are the areas that maybe they want a little bit more support around related to pyramid model. And we meet and we talk about that before we develop our action plan. And then think about the supports that they're going to need in order to achieve that goal. Another thing that we consider are the classroom essentials in place? Do they have those baseline foundational things in their classroom? So we engage in this process and then we write our goal. So as I mentioned, this is a collaborative process that we do together. We take that information from the coach, from their implementation through teapot data and from Coach E's self-report about what they're doing in the classroom. And then we develop that first action plan. And I do like to make a clarification that when we talk about a PBC cycle, we're talking about each time that we meet with a teacher to engage in shared goals and action planning. We conduct a focused observation and we engage in reflection and feedback. That does not mean that each time we are meeting with a teacher that we're writing a new action plan. Typically, when we're working on a goal and an action plan with a teacher, it would take about 2 to 3 cycles. So 2 to 3 times of meeting with them, kind of going around this cycle before we're writing a new action plan. And that's just because we know that it takes, some goals take longer to achieve and to reach and maintain and be able to use those practices in different routines or with different children. So it does take time. And if we were writing a goal each time we met, that might be an indication that the goal isn't quite as scaffold enough for that teacher. So we're not writing a new goal every time we meet. And I just like to clarify that because I think sometimes there can be a little misunderstanding when we say cycle, that we're writing a new one each time.
Sarah, before we move forward, we do have a question in chat. Can you just explain what you mean by self-assessment? Like what self-assessment specifically have you used
Yes.
with this?
So we utilize the implementation checklists on the NCPMI website. So because we are coaching on pyramid model practices, we want teachers to self-assess themselves on their use of those pyramid model practices. So we utilize the implementation checklists from the NCPMI website. And the way that we embedded it within PD was that teachers would receive some workshops on pyramid model, and at various points in the workshop, we would have them pause and assess themselves, and then they would take that tool, and when we would meet for that first action planning session, we would talk about the self-assessment. We also utilized a form that can also be found on the NCPMI website, the goal planning form. And it's just a way to take that very large implementation checklist and narrow it down into 3 strengths, some ideas for what you want to write your first action plan on. And that way we can kind of move through that meeting a little bit more quickly instead of flipping through all those pages of an implementation checklist. Good question. All right. I see someone also says, could I please explain a little bit more about not doing an action plan each time we meet? Yes. Let me just really quickly. When we are meeting, we will always be focused on an action plan. So the focus of that observation is going to be that action plan, but we are not writing a new action plan each time we meet. So the way that I engage in that shared goals and action planning component of PBC is that I'm observing based on that action plan. I'm giving feedback based on what I observed in that observation. And then we're deciding in that meeting, is it time to write a new goal? Do we need to continue working on this goal based on the kind of steps and things that we have in place? Is it time to move on, or do we need to work on this goal a little longer? So if we were writing a new goal each time we meet, so thinking roughly if we're meeting like every other week, it would be really hard for a teacher to get a lot of practice using that skill if we were writing a new goal each time. So hopefully that helps answer that. And just like any other skill that we do, action planning is one of those things that we get better at over time. When we first start out as a coach, and I can even relate to this, that action planning was the component that I felt the most uncomfortable doing. I second guessed myself all the time. And that was because I wanted to make sure that it was written in a way that was really clear for the teachers that I was working with to understand what they needed to be working on. So let's go over the components of an action plan. And this is a plan that you're probably familiar with. There's a lot of different versions out there, but what generally you'll see is that they have the same components. So we always will have a goal, and that is based on that practice that you have decided with your teacher is going to be the focus. So you're writing that goal. You'll talk about how you're going to know when that goal has been met. So what will be in place? What will it look like? What will the teacher be doing? What are those steps that are going to be needed to reach that goal? Are there resources or materials that you need to make or review or put into place? And then we're going to set kind of a date, like a target for when we're going to try to achieve those goals. And that's really just meant for not to be kind of like set in stone date. It can be flexible. You can adjust it because we know that early childhood classrooms are very busy places and things come up, and maybe we didn't get to step 1 before my coach came to observe. So we can adjust those. Those are flexible, but it's more for the accountability of it, right? Like, so I have a target of when I'm going to be trying to reach those pieces. So talking about how we moved from kind of using a form like this, when we were working with our coaches in the EIR project, they were pretty good at action planning, but it still was something that they struggled with. They were saying that they had a hard time writing the goals, like making sure that they were observable and measurable, and really focused on implementing a practice versus kind of what they were going to be like materials and things like that. It was also very overwhelming to coaches with having a blank plan, just where to start. They didn't know where to start. And it was taking them a long time to kind of really think about how they were going to word these things. And so we decided that coaches needed a little bit more support. So we created a tool that could help be a little bit more supportive in action planning. So when we were working with the traditional form, and I just want to preface this by saying that we're not saying that one way is better. We're saying that we saw a need where the blank action plan was overwhelming and we needed a tool to kind of support them. So just want to clarify, when I say old tool versus new tool, we're not saying that a blank action plan is wrong. It's just we noticed that our coaches needed more support. So with the old action plan, we were noticing that coaches were really focusing on what? So they were writing goals around, I will have a visual schedule versus using the visual schedule. So it was really focused on the what. And then when we created the guided action plans, we helped support coaches to think about the how they were going to implement the what. The old tool, there was a lot of time in between sessions where we were having teachers plan on their own. So it'd be like, you can think about that transition song that you're going to do. But the new tool kind of prompted coaches to do that right then, so that you could get teachers using the practices more quickly. Because if you are like me when I was a teacher, like the time in between meant that I'll think about that later and I might not think about it, right? So we took that out of the equation and we just made planning a part of that debrief with the coach. The old tool also, we had teachers or coaches that were wanting them more support. Like, am I doing this the right way? Like, can I have just a little bit of a guide? And so that's what the guided action plans were able to do. So I'm going to turn it over to Kelly, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her experiences with using the guided action plans.
Yeah, thank you. So before we really dive into how I use it, we're just going to go over the key components of the guided action plan. So with the guided action plans, you'll notice that it has a lot of the same pieces as the one Sarah just went over, but it's been tweaked a little bit to be more supportive for use by the teacher and the coach. So of course we have a spot for the goal to be written in. So that's going to be whatever practice you and your teacher have decided to work on. And then a new part that was added is the expected child outcome. And the reason that that was added is because a lot of times, and I'm sure I was like this as a classroom teacher, teachers would really be focusing on just what they want the kids to do. Like, I just need them to sit at the carpet and be quiet during whole group. Okay, well, that might be what we want them to do, but what do we need to do to help our children do that? So that is why that is there. And it's also helpful. The child outcome piece is really helpful because it can help us measure progress. So if your goal was, I'm going to explicitly teach whole group rules using different materials and strategies, then the expected outcome might be students will follow these rules the majority of the time. And then if the kids are doing that, then that's one way we can measure our progress. And then moving on down, it is set up really nicely here because there is a space for planning. So when I am writing an action plan using a guided action plan template with my teachers, this is where we're going through and saying, okay, what materials do we need? Do we have them? If not, okay, well, your coach is going to have them to you by November 22nd. And then, so they know in that space, the planning space, everything they need to gather in order to start implementing it. And I will say that has been a huge help with time management, I think, because we both know, me and the teacher know who's in charge of getting what, so we can start implementing. And then the implementation section, that is really talking about what exactly is the teacher going to be doing once they have their visual schedule posted. So I will review my visual schedule before and after each new activity. And they'll know exactly how to do that. And then we have a section for materials and resources. So if a teacher needs the solution kit, that's something we could put there. If they need to print things off, you can put in there, I need paper, I need lamination, Velcro, so forth and so on. And again, the timeline, like Sarah was saying, it's not set in stone, but it is very helpful for me as their coach. If I'm in charge of providing them with the material, I know when they need it by, and if they're in charge of making it, then they know when they need to have that by. But you know, we are very supportive coaches here in MNPS. So if they don't have it done on time, that's okay. We'll figure it out as we go. And then on the very bottom, we have let me close the chat out so I can see exactly. So this is where they are figuring out, have they accomplished their goal? I know I've met this goal. It's ready to move to maintenance when I have created all my materials and visuals. Yes. I have taught the skill. Yes. So I love this piece because it says that they're ready to move to maintenance and not just my goal is complete. So that means they're still going to be working on it, but our focus for our observations won't be on this particular goal anymore.
I do want to just give a little clarification if people are like, but this is still a blank action plan. Yes,
Right.
this one is. We do have templates, which will, talk about the benefits of, but this is one of the blank action plans that helps if you don't have an action plan out of the customizable templates that maybe you want to create your own. But this was just to illustrate the different parts of the guided action plan.
And I will say that there are definitely times when I use this one that is blank because there's not one that a template or that's already created.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kelly and Sarah. I'm really excited to not only have someone who was part of developing the tool, but someone who's using the tool actively with teachers. So I guess this question will be to both of you. But in your experience, what have been the benefits of using guided action plans in your work?
Well, there are many benefits, and a few of them are, one, saving time. So when I first started coaching with the EIR grant, we just had blank action plans, like Sarah was saying before. And I wish there was like data to back this up, but there's not. But I feel very strongly that my debrief meetings when I was just using the blank action plans were so much longer than when I have a guided action plan to use, because we are not spending so much time wordsmithing and erasing and having to go back and like, wait, this doesn't make sense. So that it's been a huge time saver. I would say that is one of the greatest benefits. And then also getting to use a menu. So if you haven't seen the gaps before, also a tool or a piece of it is an action plan menu. So the teachers, a lot of times, you know, they're really overwhelmed. We know that we go into classrooms, teachers are so overwhelmed. A lot of times we're meeting with them during their planning period or at the end of the day when they are so exhausted and they're tired and they don't even know what to think. So a menu has been so helpful because teachers sometimes aren't sure what they want to work on or what they might need to work on. And we want them to still have voice. We want them to still have choice about what they are working on because we're collaborating together. We're a team. So the menu, it kind of helps like jog their brains when they are tired at the end of the day to say, well, what is going really terribly right now in my classroom, or when is it chaotic? They can look at that and say, oh, yes, transitions, like that's something that's not going well. Let's do that. And that's also a time saver, getting to use that menu. And then as Sarah was stating earlier, when my team of coaches started, none of us had ever coached before. So that first year, we all struggled a little bit writing action plans that were measurable, are clear, made sense. So that next year when Vandy created the guided action plans, oh my goodness, like I felt like I could really go into a debrief meeting and really support a teacher to figure out the exact steps that they needed to accomplish in order to meet their goals. So it really helped me feel confident that I was doing something right. But Vandy was also very sure to let us know, like, these are not written in stone. You can change them as needed, but it was a huge support for us. Also, another benefit is it helped us focus more on the actual implementation of practices. So before, I mean, I can really remember a time like 7 years ago with a teacher when I think it took like a month to just get her visual schedule created and posted. So we wasted so much time because she said, well, I'll take the pictures and and then it didn't happen. And then I came back and nothing was up. So how it's written here, that planning piece, we know exactly what needs to be done, who's going to do it, when's it going to be done by. And then in 3 days, the teacher has all of the stuff that they need, the physical stuff, and then they can really start implementing the practice that they've chosen. So I'm thankful to Vandy that they made the gaps so I could have some support.
I think another thing that can be helpful or a benefit of the gaps, I think so often there is a child that needs a little extra support with a class-wide practice. And so one of the benefits, I believe, is that in the action plans, we have a space for you to go ahead and think about how you might individualize that class-wide practice for a child. So as part of planning, you're asking the teacher, is there anybody that's going to need a little bit more support with this transition or whatever it may be? And we also included pieces like positive descriptive feedback, because we know that's a high leverage practice that spans across the pyramid model, right? It's important to do for just about every practice. So we embed pieces within each action plan to get teachers and coaches thinking about how and when they're going to do that too.
And Sarah, I love how most of them include pieces on how are you going to support families to use the practice at home or when they're out in the community, and also letting the families know about the student success in using whatever skills the teacher is teaching the students.
Yeah. So many benefits.
So
Yeah,
many.
I love that. It sounds like it really provides that clarity, but also that space to be flexible and individualized. Um, so Kelly, since you've been using this with teachers now for a while, what has the teacher response been to using guided action plans to create their goals?
Yeah, well, I am lucky that I got to have a year of coaching using just blank templates with all my teachers. And then the very next year is when the gaps were created. And I got to coach some of those same teachers that second year. And I will say that the teachers were very excited when I showed them the guided action plans, because it did not feel so daunting. Like, I honestly think there were times when my teachers would say, I don't think I'm ready to move on to another action plan, just because they didn't want to write the new action plan because it took so much work. It was like, oh, it's, the end of the day, this is going to take forever. And with the guided action plans, it simply wasn't like that, because they had a framework to build on. And so it was very helpful for us. We both felt more supported. And then also in thinking about when I am not coaching my teachers anymore, they have access on the NCPMI website to guided action plans. So when they're like, oh, I don't have Kelly anymore, but my kids are really struggling with using problem solving skills, they can just hop over there. They can find the guided action plan that fits that, and then they can write one on their own. And I even have teachers that I coached 5 years ago who will say, hey, do you still have my old action plan? I can't find it. And I'll send it to them and they can go in and tweak it for their current class.
I love that. I didn't even think to do that, because we often ask about sustainability, and fading teaching supports, of how you can even use that in part of that process too. I love that.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I saw that there's been people saying, can I see the action plan? What does it look like? So these materials are available on the NCPMI website for you. You can also use this QR code if you'd like to just kind of take a peek right now. But let me tell you a little bit about what is included with this kind of bundle here. So some of the things that we created were an at-a-glance document. And this document really helps to lay out how you would use the tool. And we do recommend that if you're going to use this tool, that you take a minute to go through that document. It gives you information about each part of a guided action plan. Some frequently asked questions about using them. And then there's also tips for using the plans themselves, as well as that menu that Kelly was talking about. So what's included in that package? We have 15 customizable templates. So basically, we've covered 15 pyramid model practices that, there's like kind of fill in the blanks, some things that help prompt you to think about your implementation or the teacher's implementation with the teacher. We have 5 samples so that you can see what it looks like when they're filled out. So if you're like, I'm still just not really sure what I would put in this customizable piece, what would that look like? Then there are samples for you to kind of see what one might look like filled out. But the samples are not meant to be used as, here's your action plan. They're just simply a tool for you to kind of think about what it would look like if filled out. As you saw on a few slides back, we have a blank guided action plan. So if you're like, there's not a customizable one that fits what I'm trying to work on with my teacher, then you can pull out a blank one. We also created an individualization planning form. So for those of you that are working, maybe in a self-contained or a blended class where you might have several children that require lots of individualization, we created another form for you to think about all the kids that you might have to individualize a practice for, just to help you out there. And let's see, can we get the link to print the blank form? Let's see if someone could pop the link in, that would be great. But yeah, those are the gaps, and it's a really great resource package. As I mentioned, the At a Glance is a really great tool to kind of go over all those things that you might have questions about. We've kind of thought about what are some of the things that have come up with using these and tried to go about answering those in there for you. So I wanted to open it up to you guys to think about if you had a chance to pull up the At a Glance or some of the samples. What are your initial thoughts? What are some of the questions that you have about these forms? And we'll try to take some time to answer those for you. So you can use the chat. So do you see that this is more helpful to those that are new to coaching?
Yes. So like I said before, I did have a year of coaching with just the blank templates. And then my second year is when we got the gaps. However, my team has hired other coaches and since then, and they definitely find it very helpful because writing action plans was completely new to them. So yes, very helpful.
See lots of comments coming in. If my school does not use pyramid model, but we do use PBC, will these forms and resources work? So that's it depends, right? If your focus of coaching is on things related to high quality, supportive environments, things related to relationship building, a lot of other tools. So for instance, say you're coaching on class, right? That's a common thing that people coach on. This tool does align, right? These practices are just developmentally appropriate practices, and they do align. But I think it would depend on what the focus of coaching was. So if your focus of coaching is something specific like curriculum fidelity or math or literacy, things like that, this tool is really focused on pyramid model practices. So that's kind of a yes, and maybe not. Let's see. She said, do your coaches regularly network with each other? That's not really for the form, but I thought that you might share kind of how you guys interact, Kelly, because you do have a strong coaching network.
Yes, we do. And I think that's partly because when we were working with Vandy, they did a great job of setting that up for us. We had weekly meetings that were very SEL focused. And so we were able to form like a really tight bond. So although myself and the other coaches, we're all over the district in Nashville, and it's a very big district. So we don't actually see each other physically that often, but we do network and reach out to one another when we are struggling with something related to coaching. So yes, we do. And sometimes I don't know how to write an action plan on something that a teacher wants to write an action plan on, and I will reach out to them or a colleague at Vandy.
All right, so I'm going to move us along so that we can talk about some other things here.
Thank you. And this is actually perfect because we had a question about this in chat. So just kind of like a concern because, for years we've been talking about this is a shared goals and action planning
Yes.
process. We very much want to emphasize teacher voice in the process. So I think our brains are a little like, wait, this is all typed out and everything. So how can we ensure that coaches are still making sure teacher voice is included when using guided action plans?
I think that, Sarah, do you mind going to the next slide? Just so I can think about it for a little bit. Just like Ashley said, it could minimize teacher input and voice. So we do have to be really mindful about that. And we definitely are. So I think one way that I really try to make sure that I'm letting my teachers decide what we're going to work on, it's not me coming in there and telling them exactly what to do, is I ask a lot of reflective questions. Okay, so we've put this action plan in to maintenance. What are you seeing that your students are really struggling with right now? What time of day is feeling a little hectic, a little chaotic? And then we just have that conversation. And most of the time we're able to link it to one of the guided action plan templates that are there already. And then we can, of course, individualize it for that specific teacher and classroom. And the guided action plans are there to be a guide. So it is not set in stone. You can take out anything that you need to take out. You can add things that you guys need to add. So it is very much still the teacher deciding what they and their students need. It's just there to help the writing of the action plan go a little smoother and make sure that all the pieces are there so the teacher can get their goal implemented.
Yeah. And I think some other things that kind of come up are someone was asking if they could see what one looks like. So you can see here that visually.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Thank you, Sarah. It can be a lot, especially if you have maybe a new teacher that does not have a lot of experience. We want to think about that as we're writing our action plan. We want our teachers to feel like successful. So we may have to take out several of the steps where if we're working with a veteran teacher who already has so many things in place, we may have to add some more things to make their pyramid model practices even more. But what I like to do for my teachers to make it very clear what they are working on the action plan, because it can seem wordy, is First of all, we'll go over it. We will take out anything that we don't need. We'll add whatever we want. And then something that's been so helpful is, for instance, on this one, for teaching transitions, if they are on the implementation part, on the implementation piece, there may be 5 action steps, okay? But maybe that first observation that I go in, we're only going to be focusing on those first 2 action steps. And how do they know that? Well, I will make sure, say I'm usually get to be really good friends also with my teachers, say that teacher's favorite color is green. So I will put in bold green letters, these 2 action steps are the ones I'm going to focus on. And then once we have our meeting and we discuss, we reflect together, I give some feedback, then we will tweak whatever needs to be tweaked. And then we can add some more steps. And then I'll put those also in bold green. So then at the end, when everything's in bold green and they've done it all, then we can put it in maintenance.
I love a good color code to kind of know where
Yes.
I am. We do
Same.
have a question, like a logistical question, Sarah. Just I think in the menu. Oh, never. Megan is answering that in the chat. But like, what do the numbers mean? Like, so 2.1 teaching transitions. Is that linked to something?
So the menu links to the teapot tool. So when you see 1, it refers to item 1, and then the 0.2 or 0.3 or those thereafter aren't specific to certain indicators. They just simply mean that we're still talking about this practice, but we're talking about a different part of this practice. So for transitions, we might be talking about this, it just means that we have another level of that practice, if that makes sense. And then the 0.1, I think, refers to an individualization plan. So say you've got to work specifically with an individual child, it will help you think about those practices related to that specific child.
Thank you. Okay. So I think we have about 2 more questions left for Kelly. What are some helpful tips that you would share with a coach when using this new tool? You know, they've experienced doing action planning for years. What are some tips to get them started?
Well, one tip that I would like to share is that we know, again, our teachers don't have a lot of time to meet with us. I coach a lot of teachers that are in large public schools, so kindergarten teachers, even first grade teachers, and sometimes I only have 20 minutes with them. So in 20 minutes, I'm supposed to give them feedback on our observation, get them to reflect, and possibly write a new action plan. How in the world am I going to do that? So something that I do a lot of times, if I kind of have a feeling that during our debrief, we're going to decide that it's time for this action plan to go into maintenance, if I know that's coming, then I will send them the menu beforehand and say, hey, if you have a minute, if you're not sure what you want to work on, a lot of times they already know what they want to work on, but if they don't, can you look over the menu so we can go ahead and have an idea about what we are going to write a guided action plan on? So that's been a great time saver and kind of has the teacher prepped for that meeting. Also, this has been a lifesaver. I typically I will write the action plans when I'm with the teacher on my laptop. But I also have printed out the action plans and the menus and the examples that are there for you on NCPMI. And I put them in sheet protectors and I have them in a folder. And so to help with that teacher voice, they have the physical copy of that guided action plan right there in front of them. And I'm typing it in so they don't have to worry about typing. They can worry about what do I want in my action plan. And then it's been cool with a couple of my teachers because they're so used to seeing the action plans because they have it right in front of them every single time all year that I'm coaching them. Later on for that sustainability, I'll sometimes say if I know that teacher's comfortable with it, hey, I'm gonna let you start typing your action plans up, and I'm here for that support so that they're comfortable doing it when they aren't being coached anymore.
I love that link to the capacity building. And I'm even just thinking, when I've worked with new teachers, they're fresh from training. They're like, what is this pyramid model thing? What is coaching?
Yep.
There's just so much new information of if I can just give them the menu before we meet to then just like simply see, I need help with my transitions and we've got something to look
Yep.
at. I love that. I love how then you're giving them that capacity and ownership to keep going even after coaching. I love that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions before we wrap it up.
I know we have a question about accessing the menu. Victor, if you don't mind just putting the link to the resources in again. So the resource link brings you to a zip file that has all of these resources in it, and the menu is embedded in there.
Yeah.
And I think someone asked what exactly is the menu also.
Mhm.
So the menu is a menu of all of the 15 guided action plans that are available. So it will just, and there's just little lines and it'll say like teaching behavior expectations and rules, and visual schedule, and it just goes through all of the pyramid model practices that have a guided action plan written for them already.
Another part in the menu that I think is pretty cool is that it has, so it'll say the number that corresponds with the action plan. It has the goal statement, so you can kind of see, is this what I want to work on? And then it'll have parts where it aligns to the part of the teapot that it aligns to.
That part is so helpful, Sarah, because sometimes I have a teacher that I'm like, they're doing everything. Like, I don't know what else to work on with them, but I can look at their teapot and say, oh, we're missing this one. And then it can help guide me to guide them.
Sorry, I was just responding to a question. All right. Well, I think that is the time we have for today. So I think we are going to pass things off to Victor now. And Sarah, I think you had contact information or something.
Yeah, if you have any questions, here's my email. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
Your feedback is very important to the work that we do. Please remember to provide your feedback on this webinar with our post-webinar survey by typing the web address shown on this slide into your internet browser. Your certificate of attendance will appear once you submit the survey. We invite you to visit our website, challengingbehavior.org, to sign up for our upcoming webinars, access recordings, download pyramid model resources, and more. Thank you to our funder for making this webinar possible. This concludes our webinar. Thank you all and have a great rest of your day.